Hey everybody, welcome to video for section 5.3. Chef Decker here. I want to take a minute and just talk to you heart to heart. If you're watching this at whatever time in history you're watching this, whether it's right after I recorded or sometime in the future, I'm recording this during the COVID-19 crisis. And I want to talk to you about paying close attention to section 5.3 because when I was given the opportunity to be part of the creation of a culinary school for Northeastern Pennsylvania in Scranton, it came to me a couple years after surviving the Great Recession as a restaurant owner. And there were a lot of painful lessons that I learned from that. But one of the lessons that I learned was that it doesn't matter how good your recipes are. It doesn't matter how great you are in the front of the house or with people. It doesn't matter if you create incredible cocktails and the most beautiful cakes and desserts in the world. But if you're not also a good business person, then you're going to cause yourself a lot of stress. You're going to become one of those statistics, the number of people who fail in our industry. And so for me, part of what I wanted our students and our graduates to really be good at is to be incredible businessmen and women in the restaurant industry. To not only create incredible desserts and plates and cocktails and dining experiences, but to understand how much to charge for those things and how to retain profit. So our secret sauce at Lackawanna College is turning our students into incredible business people who will enhance the local restaurant culture wherever it is that they live and where they work. So pay attention because this part is really, really important. In 2007, 2008, as I said, I was a restaurant owner. And we are experiencing right now what I experienced in those years. Hospitality businesses feel a recession first, and the recovery feels like it takes longer to get to them. So I want to set you up so that coming out of this world, I mean, let's face it, we just exited an incredible bull market. We had unprecedented unemployment rates. Restaurants were enjoying greatest revenue levels that they've had ever. Great profit levels, lots of jobs. We'll be back. We will. Restaurants will survive. They may be a bit different. Products and delivery of products might be different, but restaurants will always survive. And if it's in your bones and in your blood like it's in mine, then you're going to want to emerge as someone who can be an agent of change for our industry, someone who can make incredible products and services, but also hold on to family-sustaining jobs for yourself, for the people that come to work for you, and can provide incredible, long-lasting restaurant and hospitality experiences for your community. So let's find out how to be good financial managers, okay? Turn in your book to about page 158, and we're going to talk a little bit about food cost percent. So I'm not going to cover what I covered in the PowerPoint. I want you to watch that and go through that first, where I narrate in a little video in the corner through that. But what I want to do is talk about how to manipulate food cost percentage. So I'm assuming right out of the chute that you are going to calculate your cost proportion on every item you serve. And let me tell you this, it may not surprise you that this big nerd held on to the food costing form that I had as a culinary student. And I don't know when I took this class, I think it was 1992. And when I opened my restaurant in 2003, I used that copy. I had erased all the data. I made 25 copies or whatever, and I costed out every darn thing that hit that menu so that I knew my cost proportion and I could calculate how much I would put it on the menu for. But let's say that you go in and now you get hired as a chef at a restaurant, and you go in and you do these formulas, right? You take cost proportion divided by selling price, and when you hit enter on your calculator, you go, oh no, 45%, and that's for a piece of cake or a cup of soup. Oh no, 62%, and that's for a pasta dish. someone who created this menu just kind of created selling price based on what they thought was fair, what the market would pay, what the competitor were doing, advice of someone who didn't know what they were doing, and now you have to fix it. So what are some ways that you can manipulate food cost percent? And this chapter, these problems, we're going to work through some of them. They're going to ask you to do that a lot. That's your job. So work through all these problems, because it's going to be your job not only to calculate cost proportion, and if you can, to come up with a healthy selling price, but more often than not to go in and say, food cost is bad. What can I do? So let me tell you a couple of things you can do. Right away, I want you to remember my seesaw example, right? As selling price goes up, food cost goes down. But what happens if the menu is printed? You don't have money to reprint menus, so you can't raise selling price. Or if you did, people wouldn't come to your restaurant, or they'd get ticked off or something like that. So if raising selling price isn't an option, what else can you do? Well, you can play with the portion, right? So maybe you're talking about something like soup. And in my example that I gave you, the soup food cost was way out of whack. What could you do? Well, maybe the soup portion has been 12 fluid ounces. So you're taking a 6 fluid ounce ladle and you're filling it up twice and putting it in the soup bowl. Well, maybe you want to back that away a little bit. Maybe instead of 12, you want to do a 10 fluid ounce portion, something like that. That might not be as discernible to the public, wouldn't feel like you're actually stealing something from them or make them feel like they have less than what they paid for last time, but you could do something with your portion size, right? Instead of getting, if it's a cake, instead of, I said in the PowerPoint, instead of getting only 8 slices out of it, maybe you cut the slices a little bit smaller and now you get 10 slices out of it. You can adjust the ingredient cost, right? You can play with things. Maybe you go in and a steak is just way out of whack. You sell a ton of it. You can't afford to sell it at the price you're selling it. So maybe you need to adjust that portion size. Maybe you're buying it from a purveyor whose price is just way out of whack and you need to shop around and find somebody who offers a better price. So there's a bunch of things that you could do. Another thing to think about, and I'll give you a really funny example, is maybe your servers aren't giving the right portion. Maybe your line cooks and chefs aren't giving the right portion. So my sister Sarah worked with me at the time that I had my restaurant, and we roasted our own coffee. And so we had a great espresso blend, and we sold a lot of caramel lattes. And everyone would ask for Sarah to make the caramel lattes for them because I had it priced out. I had the list there of how many pumps of syrup to put in, how much whipped cream to put on, the milk to espresso ratio, all that thing. Come to find out that I'd be, in the front, maybe I'd be out at the espresso machine and somebody'd come in and they'd say, hey, I'll have a caramel latte. And I would go to make it and they'd be like, actually, is Sarah here? And I would be like, yeah, okay, I'll get her. And, my little chef ego would be bruised because I make an excellent caramel latte. But Sarah would come out and she'd make it. And then that happened time and time again. And by the way, Sarah gave me permission to tell this story and we laugh about it now. She might even tell it. But on the recipe costing sheet, I had costed out 2 pumps per caramel latte. Well, one day I was kind of sneaking around the corner watching someone who had asked for her to make their caramel latte, and I saw that Sarah put 8 pumps of caramel syrup in a caramel latte. So not only did it taste totally different, consistency was off, no wonder they liked hers better, but so was my cost. My food cost was out of whack and I couldn't figure out what it was. It's because I was saying 2 pumps and Sarah was giving 4 times that. No wonder I was going through way more caramel syrup than I thought I was. So pay attention to that. Think about your equipment. Think about things like that. In that soup example, if you think you're giving a 12 fluid ounce portion of soup and instead of a 6 fluid ounce ladle in there, you're not being a good manager and they're putting an 8 fluid ounce label and spooning it twice, how much soup are they giving? 16 fluid ounces. not the 12 that you thought. So you're losing 4 fluid ounce, or you're over portioning by 4 fluid ounces every time you give one of those away. The skill level of the people in your kitchen is important too, right? Maybe you think you're getting a certain yield percent, but people are really sloppy. They're throwing things away. They're eating things. You might have a theft issue that might be really important to address. That could really affect your food cost percent, right? If your servers are giving things away on the house and the house doesn't know, well, then that shows up as your food cost. You paid for those items, but you're not seeing those items registered as sale, right? So waste is a really big thing. Keeping waste logs is another really good way to be good at your food cost percent. So most good restaurants will have waste logs on reach-ins by garbages, so that the managers know, hey, why did we throw away a case of romaine? This doesn't make sense. And you'll see the date, case of romaine, the initials, and then the reason. And then that chef or that manager can go and say, hey, Billy, hey, Jennifer, why did you throw away a case of romaine? And that person could have the chance to explain, oh, hey, it was all freezer burned, and then that might be a call to your refrigeration technician to say, hey, our temperature is wrong and it's affecting product, and I'm spending, $40 on a case, and now I can't turn that into a sale. So my food cost is going to be bad. Maybe it's an example of poor receiving, like I've talked about in class. Maybe you're not checking orders in well, and a purveyor who's less than honest and wants to get rid of something so they don't get in trouble, maybe they're giving it to you because they know you're not checking. Remember how I told you that I wasn't checking? So, if you put all the bad red peppers on the bottom of a case and all I'm doing is giving a quick glance, then I never know that that whole bottom layer is bad, and I might think it's my fault. Or maybe bad receiving might be that you're accepting orders during your busy time and something perishable is going bad. So then it shows up on a waste log. Well, why? Because it sat out on the floor for an hour and a half while you were crushing it on the line, and now the product is bad. Or maybe you have a purveyor who is less than honest, and you think you're receiving a 10-pound tenderloin and somebody haphazardly signs for it or doesn't sign at all for the order, and if you actually weighed it, it was only 8.5. So you're paying a pound and a half of product that you didn't get. So all of those things are so important to know about when you're talking about being a good financial manager and delivering a good food cost percentage. Now that we talked about all that, let's get into solving a couple of these problems together. Let's do very basic on the board, and then we'll get into some that ask you about gross profit so that you feel really comfortable doing that, and some that ask you to manipulate food cost percent so you can get into that practice. Because guys, I want to tell you, you're going to be manipulating food cost percent your whole life. Think about it now. Think about now, toilet paper isn't something that goes on a food cost percentage, right? But it's an expense nonetheless. And in a COVID-19 world, a case of toilet paper might have been $10 in January. Well, what do you think the price on Amazon right now is for a case of toilet paper? Think about how natural disasters affect things. The price of perishables go up. When we were coffee roasters, there was a tsunami that happened, and we just happened to get coffee beans from Sumatra, and Sumatra was almost decimated. We couldn't get those beans, and if we could, the price was astronomical. Maybe you have tomatoes on your menu and there's some sort of weather issue that now the case of tomatoes went through the roof, so you're going to be recalculating your prices all the time. So let's go through a couple of these. Let's look at number 4. I'm going to read it and then I'm going to start solving some of these with you, okay? Okay, let's get started with number 4. Your recipe for spinach and goat cheese turnovers yields 72 servings. Remember, yields means how much it makes. So this recipe makes 72 servings, and the total recipe cost us $37.20. Calculate a selling price for this dish if you want to run a food cost of 19%. Okay, well, we know that the formula is cost per portion divided by food cost percent, right? So cost per portion divided by food cost percent. I don't know my cost per portion. I do know that my recipe cost is $37.20. So step 1, take that recipe cost. So my recipe cost is $37.20. When I add up the ingredients for all of these tarts, divided by the number of tarts that this recipe will make, which is 72, gives me a cost per portion of 0.5166 is my cost per portion, okay? So my cost per portion is 0.5166. Now step 2, I can take my cost per portion divided by my desired food cost percent, and in this case I know that I want to run a 19% food cost. So in step 3, when I use that formula, I take 0.5166, my cost per portion, divided by my desired food cost percent, which is 0.19, and I get a food cost percent of $2.72. Now remember I said, so that's the math answer. Let's leave that there. Remember I said in my PowerPoint video that menu psychology has a lot to do with whether we round up or round down, whether we leave things at a nice even 0 or a 99. So let me tell you a little bit about that. Value, menu value, says that if you have something end in a 5 or a 9, then it's a perceived value. So you see that pricing structure at a lot of family style restaurants, right? $2.99, $1.95. It just sounds cheaper than $3 and $2, right? So, but that also cheapens the feel of menu items at fine dining restaurants. So at a fine dining restaurant, you might see something like this just round up, and on the menu it might have a dollar sign and just say 3, or on some menus it doesn't even have a dollar sign and it just says something like the number 3. Okay, you also, some menus you might see something like it might do 3.5, which is odd for pricing because we're used to pricing having a 0 here for a cent, but that is an upscale way to do pricing. So remember, always round up to the house. I'd rather see you round this up to $3 than rounding it down to something like $2.50, because if you lower the price, you're going to raise the food cost percent, and that's not something that we typically want to do. Okay, so number 5 will be pretty similar. Let's look at number 6 together. Number 6 says, over the course of a week, your guests ordered 389 servings of Manhattan clam chowder. Each serving sold for $3.29. If your food cost percent on Manhattan clam chowder is 23, how much money will be left over after you pay for all the chowder ingredients? Well, money left over after you pay for the cost of ingredients is gross profit, isn't it? Remember, gross profit is sales minus cost of sales, okay? So what were our total sales? Well, we can calculate that, right? We're trying to solve for gross profit. So how many people came to our restaurant? 389. So we were able to serve 389 people, and they all bought a cup of soup, the Manhattan clam chowder, that sold for $3.29. So what then were our total sales for this item? We'll take the 389 times $3.29, and you should get total sales. Let me write this up here. $1,279.81. That's your total sales. Now, it's asking how much money you will have left over after you pay for the chowder ingredients. Well, I don't know how much I spent on ingredients, or do I? I do. I do because it's telling me that 23% of this went to buy ingredients. So I can do that. I can come up with how much did I spend on ingredients. So let's take our total sales, $1,279.81 times my food cost percentage, which tells me how much I spent, and I can calculate that my total food cost dollar amount or cost of sales was $294.36. Now I can solve for gross profit, right? Gross profit is sales minus cost of sales. Okay, sales minus cost of sales. So that means $1,279.81 minus the cost of sales, $294.36, gives me my gross profit, $985.45. And gross profit, as a reminder, is all the money left over to pay other expenses besides food cost or cost of sales. Okay? Number 7 is going to be pretty similar. You're going to do the same thing. You know that this curriculum likes to do similar problems in tandem. So work on that together or in your groups or on your own. Let's see. 8 and 9 are going to be testing to see if you understand your knowledge of food cost percent. Let's look at 15, because 15 is going to have us start manipulating some parts of food cost to see if we can do it. So let's read this. A menu item that sells for $16.95 has a food cost percent of 20. What would the food cost percentage be if the selling price were decreased by 45 cents? Okay, well, what do we know so far? We know that the item sells for $16.95 and has a food cost of 20%. So we can do what we just did. We can figure out how much we spent on ingredients for this, because now they want us to say what would happen if we spent 45 cents less. Well, the menu item sells for $16.95, and we know that it has a food cost of 20%. So if we take selling price times food cost percent, we can calculate for that cost proportion, and we get a cost proportion of $3.39. So now that we know that, we can back out and say, what would happen if the selling price were decreased by 45 cents? Okay, so part 2 says $16.95. We, for some reason, can't charge as much as we used to. So now we're selling this for $16.50. Okay, what would happen to food costs? Well, it didn't tell us that our cost proportion changed. We calculated that. All we know is that for some reason we have to lower prices. So now we're selling it for $16.50. So now let's apply that formula. Cost proportion, which is still $3.39, we didn't change that at all, divided by this new selling price, which is $16.50, gives us our food cost percent of 20.54, or 20.54%. Okay, number 16 is going to have you do something similar. Number 17 is going to have you do something similar, so you can work on that. Let's talk through 21, and then I'm going to work out 22 for you. So 21 says your recipe for chocolate chunk cookie yields 36 cookies. So it makes 36 cookies. Every time you make this recipe, you get 36 cookies. And the recipe costs you $13.70. You sell one cookie for $2.75. if the total recipe cost decreased by $2.50, how much would the food cost percent change? So the first thing that you're going to have to do as you're working through this problem is come out with what is your cost per portion on one cookie. So you have a total recipe cost of $13.70 divided by how many you get out, the 36. Okay. Now you see, so you have your cost per portion and you see your selling price is $2.75. So calculate for food cost percent, cost per portion divided by the selling price that you have there, and calculate what food cost percentage would be as is. Now it says if the total recipe cost decreased by $2.50. So now take that $13.70, back out the $2.50, still divided by the number of portions, the 36, and then divide that new cost per portion by the selling price of $2.75, get that percentage, and then answer and say, how did the percentage change based on the change in the recipe cost? And what this problem is doing is just getting you real used to seeing how changes in ingredients can affect food cost percent in a negative and positive way. Let's wrap up this kind of long but important video talking about number 22.